So Philosophers is Pesser. Boss, of course. So I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, or no, I do want to ask you, what do you think philosophy is?
Large questions. First of all, it's sort of everything. Once you ask, it's not. Yeah, the in the sense of the love of wisdom, that has become a meaningless phrase because it has become much more about. I think it's about understanding and creating purpose.
See, I don't know.
So, you don't know?
No, because I don't know. I mean, to me, first of all, I love anything that sounds cliche is often very true. I mean, I love philosophy as the love of wisdom. And I think that is, I don't think philosophy has any purpose other than philosophy. Other than wisdom. To acquire wisdom. To love wisdom, actually. And acquire it through that.
But I guess wisdom is wisdom is required to set the right purposes. I mean, the greatest foolishnesses of mankind are always to aim for stupid things or aim for hip hop.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's inherent to wisdom that it is mostly there to illuminate a purpose, but I don't think a wise man is needed for both. A king needs a wise man, and a wise man needs a king. But I don't think a wise man is inherently a king, because wisdom requires too much slowness, and a philosopher is slow.
Exactly, but this is in order to set. For example, a philosophical phrase would be the goal is the path, or the path is the goal. I think that's a properly philosophical view, and this is also that is sort of the extreme of a philosophical approach to purpose, I would say. And then if a philosopher advises a king, he would always advise to go slower, or at least take a step back and see the king's purpose, which would be just directly will to power, in a greater purpose,
but will to power in a surrounded by certain conditions. I mean, will to power is never absent of value. As I'm always using value ontology. I mean,
right. So, but a philosopher would then, question the king, so as to reveal to the king what his true purpose is, what the purpose is behind his will to, the whole thing about losing the battle in order to win the war, for example.
Yeah.
So Aurelius was just talking about reading, that Heidegger said that you had to spend 10 years reading Aristotle, and so Aurelius went to look at Aristotle's teleology and how there was this point about how it's more subtle than it appears, and I get that feeling from Aristotle that he actually never manages to quite explicate what he means.
Yeah.
And that the whole thing about the difference between the Platonic form ideal and the whole thing of ideals and the immediate possibility of, because Plato never goes anywhere. I mean, it's just what is there now? What is the right thing, or what is the truth?
That's true.
And Aristotle has these striking insights about, for example, rhetorics, techniques, how you influence, how you go from one place to the other using certain means. But then the means also, he also goes into how the means actually, I suppose he goes into that, how they create the ends, or there's stuff in him that suggests that he is aware that,
or that the ends is made of the means in a way, like material.
Yes. Yeah, this is I think what we're still struggling with, and what will to power, what Nietzsche's idea has always been about, sort of uniting the ideal and the real through this, and then in the end you get to the point where there's only the intermediate stage, which is the energy or the power itself. But then nihilism sets in, because then sort of all
Really?
possible
You think?
goals. Well, if in the beginning, I mean, it opens up and you have to then cross it. But
Right.
in order to cross it, then Nietzsche offers, because he immediately saw this chasm open, and then he crosses it by positing the Superman, so that we can at least imagine that there needs to be a bridge. But this is his immediate sort of, okay, shit, there's an abyss. We need to. I created this in a sense. I opened this up formally, so I need to immediately send the arrow across. But that's only his symbolic act, so that we can actually build the bridge. Like he sent an arrow, like a red line attached to an arrow across the ravine, so that we can follow that red line, which no one can actually walk, with building a bridge with much more, I think, prosaic, less poetic, sublime means.
Well, and he did say like the coming times will be times of building. Like I'm obviously deeply paraphrasing, but he says something like, "It's good that man today is so dumb and like bestial, because that's what's required right now." Like the red line looks at what's going to be built. It has the ability to look down upon the building.
And that's very scary for me. That's still so. You have to be so immoral but amoral to actually address man as this sort of plastic or building material. Because also Nietzsche doesn't. Well, let's say he saw it coming that there were going to be more effective means of what he called deception, which means to mobilize, I guess, the beast man or the primitive.
Almost even thinking itself, deception. I don't know if that.
But also simple things like technology, like film, for example.
Yes. Radio. The radio is one of the most the greatest advances and gestures of deception ever conceived. It's incredible. The radio, or starting with obviously the side, like whatever that thing was called, where it was a horn touching the vinyl and then played the sound. Recorded sound is just incredible in terms of deception. What it was able to do.
It's very much the Platonic realm coming into the real world. I guess nobody.
I mean, yeah, but it doesn't have to be. I don't think. I mean, I remember once hearing about how we need to worship, a call to worship Venus, and it became concrete to me, that call, when I heard music in the distance, and I couldn't make out whether it was recorded or an actual band playing. It made more sense that it was recorded because it was coming from a building. But then I realized the most beautiful thing was not even caring, like just there's a noise coming from there that is made by a band, and if it is a radio, then it's magic. It's magic that brought these noises to me. It's beautiful. And Plato, is very unmagical.
Yeah. So we are in a completely different world now than any of these philosophers were, and of course now in our time, man is still just overwhelmed by the magic. Rightfully, I mean that would be very disrespectful to the magic to immediately employ it to manage put it to service or something. Now it just rules us and we serve it. We everybody's now feeding the cloud and the social media, and everybody's feeding the world with images and illusions. This is now what man does, what man is. But in the end. And there are some very cynical, very ugly forms of directing it, which are very uninteresting.
Yeah.
But in the end, I always associated myself strongly with the ideal of the artist tyrant, as Nietzsche calls it. Even though I'm aware that he might have meant, or he could have meant, literally things like,
a tyrant that paints.
Well, just more working on man literally, breeding and
all of these
genetic
things, anything that fit. That is in as far as how Platonic Nietzsche is, because he takes Plato's universals and ideas, and he doesn't deny them. He says he rips them from the eternal heights and puts them in a continuum of chaos. So art, say, is a universal idea, but not truly universal. It's not eternal. It's part of a continuum. So anything that fits art fits what Nietzsche meant. So beautiful, and it's a concrete thing. You know, it exists.
Yes, what Capable just wrote to me this morning about how art actually creates our soul. Actually, it's not the same thing, but it strikes me that he was pondering about how politics needs to be, in order to affect some change in politics, you need to, he said something like, a line of political reasoning as tight as a line of cocaine or something.
I fucking agree.
And then he came to the other point, like, and the other thing is of course art, because all the other but then he went into how there's so many immensely great artists actually working, and how they basically, art forms the whole substance of the human soul. It's kind of in a sense, well, it's very humbling. Also, you have to, like, when I read this, I get these things of pride, but this means, I mean, how can I not dedicate my life to art then, in a sense? I mean, what?
Art
so this is, I think that, yeah, it's very. This is also why we're so. I mean, what we are drawn to. I mean, we don't need to make this explicit now, but there's no escape from it. I guess from philosophy, there's only the art. I mean, we couldn't even do politics without art. Nobody can do real politics without art.
It's not. Then it's not.
Nobody ever did that. Like,
it doesn't even make sense. Any political instance is artistic. I can't think of a single example where it isn't.
Right. It always needs to be. The message can never come through like just stating something. It must always be conveyed as a world.
Because it would be absurd. I mean, politics is the realm where too many small things need to be gathered together to be addressed individually. And you can't collectivize them as, like, for example, data. It's undoable.
This is what's so sad about scientific. What do you call these people?
Well, it's art itself. Science, it's itself art, artistic.
No, but then, well, when it's real science, when it's actually created.
No, even fake, like even the polls show that this and this and that. That's an artistic express. It might be shitty art,
well,
and I would agree, but it's not true that these things are true.
No,
it's
but
artistic.
But that something isn't true doesn't make it art to me. Actually, that something art makes it true in a sense. But I mean, you hear these people, these scientists will always say about and they always say about their the singularity. They talk about how if calculating powers are strong enough, somehow the problems of the world will be solved. And there's so many people who actually believe that. Yeah, this is ridiculous.
And what's cool about Nietzsche is that he could explain them in like a single sentence. And just explain them. It's fantastic.
And I mean, the single sentence would have to do with that. I mean, computing power has nothing to do with values, and it has no aim. You know, it has no. A computer doesn't have a fucking clue what to do with its computing power, and if it's so much stronger in its computing power than the people manning it, then it's going nowhere.
Yeah,
it's just chaos. It's just creating more problems, I suppose.
Yeah. Although a computer could be designed where the very binary language it's founded on is language anchored in values. That would be an ideal in a sense. In this quantum computer paradigm that's now emerging, I think I'm sort of hoping that maybe it can only be made possible by infusing the processor with a self-valuing structure, and it can only be done with philosophy,
I would also think.
I mean, because it fits in what you say about philosophy is what determines, in a sense, purpose. How can a computer have purpose if it has never touched philosophy? It just becomes a dumb machine that needs directing.
Running out for this video. Just walk towards that pro there. Oh yeah.
Do we should show them what we were looking at all this time, or never.
Let's see if the time allows it.